circumstantial.
I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace, find no peace. Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the well-run suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders, pushing up just like these boulders. See conflict like it's water, still this mercy, take my chalice, seeking grace through all this malice. All of these salty motherfuckers to give up.
Politics and sinners, they all the same.
Got me stuck in this endless game. But I won't give up,
won't play the role.
Gotta do what's best
for my soul.
I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up the room. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth. Living wild but truthfully free. God keep on watching over me. Take my pleas and keep the receipts. I just want all.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. What I want to get into first is, I always start off with independent music. And this morning I got Don, he always drops good ones. He got Pure Intentions for you this morning. So we're going to start off with Don Tripp, Pure Intentions. And I'll be right back right after this.
Yeah. Here we go. Season 4. I guess I'll take a moment to reflect. Sometimes you gotta cut throats to cut the checks. If money is the root of all evil, then I'm possessed. I'm nowhere near perfect yet, I did my best. Nowhere near perfect, yeah, I confess. To teach me how to fly, mama pushed me out the nest. Me, I'm just living life, lit like the Christmas lights. I hope you copy everything I do so you can get it right. All my dogs eat, grab a salsa and a kitchen knife to ride on my hip. I'm just waiting for a fish to bite. If you feel froggy, leap at me, please. I keep a pair of George with me, 223s. I swear that ends well. I hope heaven knows I meant well. I hope heaven knows. I hope heaven knows. I hope heaven knows. If I ever had a grudge, I'm never letting go. Sticking to the script, same nigga every episode. Even though I don't follow rules, I respect the code. Of course I'm cold-hearted, I was raised by an Eskimo. Either you a rider or you not, nigga, yes or no. Say you hard body, in my way you a stepping stone. Call a spade while I'm shuffling my deck of cards. I kinda miss breaking down bricks like a wrecking ball. You know how I'm rocking. Bitch, you know motherfucking well you can't stop me. And quitting not an option. 2 magazines take together, call them chopsticks. My money speak for me, no need to gossip. Don't live pills. I hope heaven knows. I hope heaven knows I meant well. All's well that ends well. I hope heaven knows. Yeah. I hope heaven knows. Heaven knows. I hope heaven knows. I'm never letting go. Yeah.
Damn, that was cold. That was Don Tripp, Pure Intentions. I wanted to get into a little documentary this morning that takes us back into history and really gives us the time that before we got into, everybody's doing these boycotts, these sit-ins, these, I kind of feel like it's a time to go back to history and see maybe if we're doing something wrong, if we are doing it right, if we're not, maybe we're doing it all the way. We're just repeating history all over again. So we got to figure out, where do we figure out the medium, right? So we can change what is actually about to happen. So we can get change, and not that we got to sit here and go through these steps all over again and go through this turmoil. So with that being said, the sit-ins, students occupy lunch counters to demand civil rights.
The F.W. Woolworth Company in Greensboro, North Carolina, a former variety store that sold everyday items like notebooks and pens on one side of the facility and also served meals at its lunch counters on the other side. For part of the 1900s, this was actually one of many establishments in the South that practiced a form of segregation. At this store, black people could come in and spend their money, but they could not sit at the counters to eat their food. By 1960, however, change would finally arrive, inspired by successful breakthroughs in the civil rights era, like the Montgomery bus boycott, the Little Rock Nine school desegregation, and anti-colonial campaigns all the way in Africa. A group of black Americans would spark a new series of protests, one where they would stand up to injustice by sitting down at segregated facilities to demand equal treatment. It was a nationwide movement that became known as the sit-ins. The movement was started by 4 college students in Greensboro, North Carolina: David Richmond, Franklin McCain, Joseph McNeil, and Azale Blair Jr., now known as Dr. Jabril Hassan. The Greensboro 4 were freshmen here at North Carolina A&T. They forged a close bond at the school's old dormitories, which have since been torn down and replaced by new ones that now bear their names. Back then, the group would meet inside the dorms, where they would have thoughtful conversations about their lives, their hopes, and indeed, their frustrations. Chief among them was the racist mistreatment they faced in Greensboro and across the South. One day, their anger reached a breaking point when Joe McNeil was denied food at his segregated bus station. It was a demeaning experience for him, and it became the last straw for the 4 friends. Tired of dealing with so many injustices, they decided to do something about it. So on February 1st, 1960, they set in action a plan to challenge the racist customs. That afternoon, they marched from their school all the way to downtown Greensboro, several miles away, and they walked up to the segregated Woolworth department store with a simple goal: to demand equal treatment. When they entered, they browsed around for a few minutes and bought everyday items from this area where a table once stood. Then, after making those purchases to prove they were paying customers, they walked straight toward the lunch counters, searching for open seats to order some food. They found a few stools available right around this corner, and they took their seats. Then, the 4 friends waited, not only patiently, but also nervously, to be served. Eventually, a waitress approached the 4 friends, and as expected, she told them that they could not sit there. She noted that these seats were reserved for white customers only, and that the boys should leave before they stir up trouble. But the Greensboro 4 did not budge. Instead, they politely asked to be served, pointing out that they had just paid for several items on the other side of the store, and that their money should also be accepted on this side too. Their demands were ignored, however, and the waitress walked away. Later, the white store manager approached them and told them the same thing, that they must leave before there's trouble. But again, the boys remained seated. Eventually, after several failed attempts to get rid of the boys, the store simply decided to close early, knowing that this was the only way to get them to leave. And that's exactly what happened. The Greensboro 4 stood up and walked out of the Woolworth. Shortly thereafter, a journalist who had received word about the sit-ins caught up to the protesters as they left the building, and he snapped this famous picture of them. He also asked the 4 friends about their experience, and the boys told them what they did, and then they also pledged that they would be back to carry out more protests. True to their word, the Greensboro 4 returned to the store throughout the week, this time with reinforcements. They had convinced a number of students in town, both white and black, to join them at the lunch counters to demand more rights, So now, their small act of defiance had grown into a full-blown movement, and these larger follow-up protests would also receive greater press coverage, which would have a tremendous impact. The images and articles that the journalists produced would be circulated across town and all over the country, inspiring other people to join. But as it turns out, all that attention would also generate detractors. Throughout the week, dozens of white segregationists would show up to oppose the growing sit-in movement. So by this point, there were crowds of civil rights activists on one side and crowds of racists on the other. The scenes were tense, with segregationists taunting the activists, trying to incite them. But, with a few exceptions, the black protesters remained peaceful, determined to win the fight without violence. The sit-ins continued through February 6th, when the standoff got so intense, the authorities received word about a bombing threat against the store. As a precaution, everyone was evacuated, and Woolworth was temporarily closed down. Now, as it turns out, no explosive was found, and the protest would eventually resume when the store reopened, but its temporary closure was considered a small victory for the students, for they had managed to briefly shut down a segregated institution using non-violent methods. The stance the Greensboro protesters took was so novel and so inspirational, it spurred similar acts of defiance all over the South. From the Carolinas to Texas, thousands of black Americans and many white people who supported them would carry out their own sit-ins. In Nashville, Tennessee, there was one that also generated a lot of attention. It was led by college students and future civil rights icons like John Lewis and Diane Nash, as well as prominent activists like James Lawson. Notably, many of them had actually been planning to organize sit-ins even before the Greensboro protests had started, and they even took extraordinary steps to prepare themselves for the abuse they would face from segregationists. In churches and college campuses like these, the students participated in non-violent workshops where they were trained, often by James Lawson, to respond peacefully when confronted by violence. The way they did it was by acting out the type of mistreatment they would come across. In these controlled settings, they taunted each other, hurled racist insults, and even simulated physical abuse against one another. The training sessions were intense, but the students learned how to withstand violence and resist the urge to retaliate. They would take the high road and win the fight peacefully. On February 13th, after weeks of training, the Nashville students launched their protests at this former Woolworth store. Now, the facility has since been turned into a theater, but some of the original seats from the old lunch counters are still displayed in front of the building. On these stools, the protesters sat down and demanded to be served, as was their right. The first few days of the sit-ins were largely calm, but 2 weeks later, the violent opposition they had prepared for would show its hateful face. Behind these seats, segregationists shouted racial slurs at the peaceful protesters. They spat on them, shoved them, dropped hot cigarette butts on them, and in several cases, physically assaulted them. Some even slammed the protesters' heads against the counters, dragged them out of their stools, and beat them. Still, punch after punch, insult after insult, most of the civil rights activists stuck to their nonviolent training and refused to retaliate. They took the high road and continued their protests peacefully. Eventually, their composure would be tested when they faced additional pressure from the law. In many cases, activists got arrested for their actions. Some were fined or even ordered to serve time. Still, that did not deter the movement. Eventually, after months of protests and boycotts, segregated stores across the South started losing money and came under heavy pressure to change their ways. But many white supremacists continued to resist. On April 19th, a huge boiling point occurred at this site in Nashville. In an act of terror, segregationists bombed the house of Z. Alexander Luby, a black city council member and attorney who represented the peaceful protesters. Thankfully, Luby and his wife made it out alive, but this atrocious act proved to be the last straw for the Nashville protesters.
Wow.
Later that day, they organized a giant march to demand change. Along this busy street, thousands of them marched, largely in silence, all the way to downtown Nashville and toward the county courthouse. When they got here, the protesters, led by Diane Nash, confronted Mayor Ben West about the city's racist customs. And from the steps of this building, facing the crowd of students, the mayor gave them a huge concession. He acknowledged that segregation was immoral and that lunch counters should be integrated. It was a monumental declaration, and it became the watershed moment that opened the gates to meaningful change. Over the next few days, Nashville leaders would finally reach a deal to end the racist policies at department stores. On May 10th, several stores in the city allowed the first groups of Black Americans to sit at their lunch counters and be served, just as white customers would. The Nashville protesters had won. Over the next few months, more and more lunch counters across the South would see similar results. Back in North Carolina, at the Woolworth where the movement first began, management also agreed to end its racist policy. On July 25th, the store served the first Black people at the lunch counters, almost 6 months after the Greensboro Four first sat there and ignited the nationwide sit-ins. The protesters in Greensboro had also won. The change these college students created was beyond monumental. They demonstrated the power of nonviolent resistance, the idea that you can alter the status quo by taking the high road, and that you can triumph with dignity in the face of cruelty. Over the next decade, the U.S. would see similar acts of courage from other Black Americans in the South. Among them, 4 little Black girls in New Orleans who, at the young age of 6, would endure so much hate to desegregate schools in their own city. In our next chapter, we'll cover the bravery of Ruby Bridges, Tessie Prevost, Gail Etienne, and Leona Tate. And we'll see just how America's conscience...
Man, y'all better know them names. Because them are some of the first Black kids that went to white schools that had to have National Guards come out for them. And I'm kind of glad we're talking about this today, right? Because today what I'm going to bring for you is policing, politics, and public trust, the raw truth. And for me it is, you know what I'm saying, is because we all have different stories. We all have different journeys. And it needs to be spotlighted, right? You know, there was Trump did a Black History Month event yesterday at the White House. And I got asked, you know, how I felt about that. And I don't know if I really wanted to answer it yet or not, but I think I do now, is because, you know, they put somebody that came up there with a Haiti flag, and said they were for us. Yeah, no, I don't know about all that. You know what I'm saying? Everybody that I've seen that I know, they're not American. They don't have the same journeys. They're not Black Americans. So you're putting up people that don't even really, honestly, I don't even care about. So how can we? That's like, so I really didn't understand his whole Black History Month thing yesterday, because, you know, and I'm not calling anybody out. Y'all do what y'all do, right? Because I understand is that you have to cut somebody's throat to cut a check. You know what I'm saying? To get it. So I understand it. You know, but we talk about all this, you know, immigration is a hot topic right now. But we still have gun violence going on. We can't forget the goal. Just because they're trying to distract us, divide us? No, we can't steer from the goal. No, we can't. You have to be that mission vision. You got to have that tunnel. You know, no matter, this is the one thing that I started to figure out, right? Is that even through all this bullshit, I started to realize that they were going to throw people at you and issues for a reason. But stay on the go. Stay what you're doing, because don't let that shit involve you. Don't, you know, that's the one thing, is when Diddy came out, Y'all niggas will speak about Puffy and Sean Combs and Tupac and Beef and all that shit. But what about the own Diddies in your own neighborhoods? In your own communities? Y'all niggas uplift them and not call them out. You know what I'm saying? So I had to really think about that. And then I understood this, that, money is the root of all evil. Because people will do any and everything for money. Any and everything. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has a price. Some people it's very expensive. Other people it's pretty cheap. You know what I'm saying? It depends on what your kinks are, what you're into. Because some niggas sell out for cheeseburgers. There's some hot fries and some, you know what I'm saying? Shit. Some people look it's cash. Some people have sacrificed other people's lives to get their success. Now, how is that not crazy? And the crazy thing of it is, I sit here, and I was on Twitter this morning, and Mr. Hansen, Nathan Hansen, I believe his name is, he put some shit on Twitter about all these organizations, like 50 million to the Minneapolis Foundation, or, and all this big ass money, and so they can pass out money to other nonprofits. And I'm like, yo, I thought we were supposed to put a stop to this shit. I thought we weren't supposed to keep, allowing this and then just look the other way and like, oh, we're gonna try to fix it. No, we still got crooks in play that y'all still want to give money to. And that's the one thing that, like the first story I got this morning, it's about the federal oversight of MPD, Minneapolis Police Department. And everybody understood, everybody knew. And I honestly, I see the overlay for the underlay. Right. So while this was going on, because we all knew that Trump was coming in office, but a lot of people also knew that the judge was just had to make a filing, a ruling. I shouldn't say a filing, a ruling, if they were going to proceed. So I'm not understanding why are we going through if the taxes will go up, they keep going, and the programs they want will be cut. Right. I know, no, that's the one. I wish that's the one crazy part, right? It's because I've sat here all week and I watched these committee meetings between the Senate and the House. Yesterday there was some about that list about hateful words and shit. Walter Hudson, Leah Finke. But then there was, some public safety ones about the carjackings, sentencing guidelines, and, all these things. And I'm like, damn, the one people that I don't see up there is people that been through it on the good side and the bad side. You know what I'm saying? That's the one thing that I really kind of feel like we push out is hearing the truth, because we put all this money into these programs. But are they really working? Are they working the way that we want them to? And in my eyes, in some areas they do, in other areas they don't. Somebody told me, it's like, oh, it's just all about the person. No, I'd stop really looking at the person because it's the system that allows this shit. I'm starting to see more and more, just like in Alabama, you had this week, the whole police department was arrested. And one of their wives for breaking into the evidence room because their dispatcher overdosed on duty. He broke into the evidence room. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, this shit is crazy of how we're supposed to be getting all this, top line law enforcement. And we get some, I don't know what, we get some crackheads, some meth heads. Like, we have a problem in America that we honestly don't want to look at. We don't, because we like to sugarcoat shit. We like that feel good instead of the raw truth. We want to be able to, that's the one crazy thing that I sit here and I look at, right? Is what a lot of people don't understand is if you go back into history and you see it all play out.
You see it all play out. And what do most people do? They look the other way. They look the other way because it's not at their door yet. It's not in their neighborhood. That's what I can remember growing up. Because in my eyes, that's the one crazy thing today, the way I see Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, parts of Robbinsdale, those were like uppity areas. A lot of those areas are ghetto as hell now. I mean, you go out to Brooklyn Center, I will tell you like this. I ain't never seen Brooklyn. I never imagined that Brooklyn Center would be like this. But then when you got rid of Brookdale, when you got rid of the Walmart, and you're starting to look, restaurants are closing, big big corporations are moving out of state, out of the city, then I understand it. And it's like, we're so worried about that we want to change something. How are you going to change something if you don't even know what's going on? A lot of people have good intentions. That's the one crazy thing. I was going through these 990 forums this morning, and I'm probably going to do something next week on them because there's a lot. And I really honestly feel like we need to be looking at these. I'm going to be 100. You know what I'm saying? They go up to the state capitol and they ask for millions of dollars when they're already got millions of dollars that are liquid. So I'm not understanding it. Or they have investments overseas. And it's like, why? We have a whole bunch of people out here freezing. I know it's about to warm up, but they're freezing. They're cold. They got nowhere to go but some tents that y'all want to tear down every couple of days. And then we're going through all this all over again. It's like a cycle. This morning, Minneapolis Crime posted, tweeted, whatever we're going to call it, that they were bringing firewood to homeless encampments. And I get it. But if we cause the problem, how can we should at least try to solve it. We should at least try to solve it. That's the way it's like, damn, can we at least do that? I mean, that's wild. Right. And that's wild to me, and I really want to do an in-depth episode where I'm just going through 990 forums and getting some of these activists, like a Marcus Smith or like a Marvina Haynes or a Tim Christopher, Reverend Tim Christopher, and some others, and be like, hey, y'all see all this money going to certain places. How does this make you feel? And you look at the community you're fighting for, and it's still the same, and it's not getting any better. What can we do? I'm not understanding it because people are, and this is the one thing that blows my mind, right? And me and Marcus were talking about this yesterday, was people are getting mad about Doge, and I get it. I get it. Honestly, can you trust somebody, one of the richest men and the richest, no, fuck that. He is the richest man in America, and he's got the president's ear. I don't know if I can trust that. But I know that I can trust that Dodge, whatever the fuck it is, because it's not about partisan. It's about getting rid of the waste and the shit that we don't need to be paying for. Programs that are already there, but y'all want to make up some magical fucking words in there. I don't get it. Because that's the whole thing when it comes down to, and I ain't got nothing against it. Right? But what I don't understand is like they, them was plural to me. That means multiple. You know what I'm saying? Like, damn. I get it. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, I fucking don't understand. And I definitely don't ever want to try to disrespect nobody. I don't want to try to make anybody feel like they're not wanted. I want to try to understand it. Because when I was growing up, you were either a he or a she. You weren't no they, them. You weren't no meow, meow. You weren't no horse. You weren't no dog, no cat. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure there was people out there that went by pronouns, but that's not something that we really were into. You know, just like I see now, a lot of these events that go on are in churches. That's not how it was when we grew up. We'd be damned if a gay person went into a church and wasn't damned. Come on, now they accept the shit. And it's like, we've gotten so far away from state and church, the divide between it, because it's intersected. You can't tell the difference. It's like yeah, I don't know what the fuck it is anymore. Oh, sure. Hello, Moto. Oops. Somebody calling me. I don't know who that is. Yeah, I don't know what that number is. But yeah, about to go on to the next, what I was talking about when it came to, you know, the DOJ, and we all knew that it was coming. We all knew that it was probably going to be a decision that we didn't like, that we didn't want, but we all understood that it was coming, right? So, you know, especially with the new administration, you know, the blue to black to back to blue, you know, we all know that there was a counteract to BLM. You know, when George Floyd passed away, that's when everybody wanted to start doing, you know, DEI. They wanted to say, oh, there's so much racism in America, but we talked about it, but are we really doing anything about it? Except a few people came up on top. Well, they're still marginalized, are still suffering. They're still silenced. They're still judged. You know what I'm saying? They're still down there, and we're sitting here fighting. And for what? Because at the end of the day, a lot of people, situations have not gotten better. They've only gotten worse.
Police reform deal done. And tonight there are new concerns about that consent decree.
That agreement was made with the U.S. Department of Justice. A new DOJ memo reads, the new administration may wish to reconsider settlements and consent decrees. What do community leaders think about that?
We can do it without the DOJ.
Uba Ali spoke with the Minneapolis police chief tonight. Uba, it sounds like he agrees in general with that idea.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In fact, Chief Brian O'Hara says he is more than confident that meaningful police reform can happen without federal oversight.
There's been a whole lot of real work that's been happening for almost a year.
Progress made under a court-supervised deal with the state implemented after the murder of George Floyd. An agreement limiting when officers can use force and working to eliminate racial bias.
That state consent decree covers all of the things that people have in federal consent decrees.
Earlier this month, the city approved an agreement with the Department of Justice before the end of Biden's administration. Now, the Trump administration may consider halting it altogether. But Mayor Jacob Fry says the city will move forward, saying, make no mistake, we have the tools, the resolve, and the community's backing to fulfill our promise to the people of Minneapolis. Our work will not be stopped. Despite the uncertainty of federal oversight,
we can do it without the DOJ.
Community groups like the Unity and Community Mediation Team say the work has been ongoing for decades without oversight.
We don't need Trump to tell us what to do. We don't need the federal government to tell us what to do. We have done it.
And what they've done is already in writing with a state agreement and a memorandum of understanding.
Minneapolis is in good hands as long as we don't play politics with this.
Nigga, you already have. Fuck out of here, dummy.
It's important to remember the Justice Department under the first Trump administration put a stop on the use of consent decrees. We'll have to wait and see how things play out this go around. Frank?
Yep, it's an important story. We'll follow it, Uba. Thank you.
That's wild to me. You know, and a lot of
Start
people
today at ZipRecruiter. Hire better.
Understanding the parameters. And I feel like, I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of reasons why I feel like they don't want the DOJ to come in here, because they were begging for it just a couple months ago. They wanted the DOJ, but was that Biden's DOJ or is that Trump and Elon's DOJ? Because I guarantee there's a fucking difference. because that Doge is going to come in and going to see that the money y'all was making, there was kickbacks. People were doing shit fraudulently. That's why y'all don't want Trump's people to come in here. I get it. You know, just like, and the crazy thing of it is, like out in New York, you have a bunch of correctional officers in prisons boycotting, right? I shouldn't say boycotting, striking. That's not national news. Why isn't it? They arrested the officers that killed Robert Brooks yesterday and charged them. Why aren't we talking about that? That's not in national news. Everything, and that's the one crazy thing of it is, because even when I got next, you know what I'm saying? We're talking about the traffic cameras. So come on, man. They already don't do their jobs. They already don't. You know, that's the one crazy thing. So like when you get rid of the consent decrees, right, and you don't go by them, in my eye, and we haven't changed shit, we're not even looking at shit differently because we can't all agree on what happened to George Floyd. We can't even agree on that because that's still brought up almost 5 years later. And we're still talking about that. We haven't changed from it. I wonder, you know, I was young. I was just a kid, teenager when Rodney King got beat. I do remember that was a big racial incident. You know, you had Mark Furman and the detective. And that showed you right there how, you know, they talked about black people even when it came to OJ. You know, it's like, damn. I don't understand it. You know, the system, and we're going to call it that, the establishment, it was built to protect people. It wasn't built to get over on anyone. It wasn't, in my eyes, to make it seem like somebody was in charge, because we're all in charge. We're all free. We all have the same equal rights. We all have the same 24 hours. It's just what you choose to do with that. You can sit here, and that's the one crazy thing is that there's a bunch of us, right? There's people that just go to work and don't pay attention to nothing, right? Doesn't matter. They just want to play their video games. They just want to whatever they do, right? I just bringing up video games because that was his gaming. You know what I'm saying? But people do what they want to do. They go to work. They pay attention to the TV shows. Pay attention to what's the newest trend on TikTok? Because a lot of this shit is scary to them. They don't understand it. We put people through a public education system that honestly their brain can't handle the shit that's out because they don't know any different. They don't know any. That's the one. I sit here and I think about it all the time. Look at the rural areas. Those are big time progressive liberal areas. And then you go out to the rural. Those are usually, you know, your Republicans. So how do you interact that urban in that rural? Because it's been a hell of a fight. It's been a hell of a fight. Our legislation, you know, that's the one crazy part of it is like you used to be able to say people like from Laverne, Minnesota, or like Jackson, Scott County, you know, Anoka and them parts. But now those areas are getting affected. You know, they used to want to have their hand in a cookie jar because there was money there. You know, as long as there was money and everybody, there was enough to go around, it was all fine and dandy. It's not that way anymore. You know, that's the one thing that I will say is that ever since Biden took office, I'm just going to say this, and this isn't about politics. It's just about this is about their integrity. Right. And I've seen that this was a party, and I don't put this all on Biden. This was a party that wanted to steer away from personal responsibility, personal rights, and make it the government's decision. They wanted to have the right to do whatever they wanted to do to people, just like how I feel like the Second Amendment is now. You know, it's like because we want to label somebody a felon. Are they really a felon if they're innocent? You know, we like to call out the wrong, Well, let's call it out. You know what I'm saying? Let's be equal with it. Let's call everybody out. Let's not pick and choose and who we're gonna call out and oh, we're gonna call out this person and no, we're gonna be quiet about this person because they didn't know any better. Or their skin color is different. Come on, man. Or they got stature in the community and they got money to be able to pay off certain things. Does that make it okay? No, it doesn't. So that's what we need to have conversations about is accountability, is justice, because everybody's justice looks different. Everybody's justice looks different. So I want to get into this traffic cameras. And basically it'll be when you like red light cameras that'll get your license plates. I think it's a license plates reader and a picture of you, whoever's driving your car. Is that something that we need, or do we need police to actually just do their jobs and hold people accountable?
Well, drivers in Minneapolis, you might want to get ready to brake. The city is rolling out a new pilot program that will put traffic safety cameras at several intersections throughout the city.
Something similar was tried about 20 years ago, but the state Supreme Court intervened. But now all the needed legislation seems to be in place. Fox 9's Karen Scullin joins us now live from South Minneapolis, where one of those cameras could be going up pretty soon, Karen.
Yeah, we're at West 54th Street and Lyndale Avenue South here in South Minneapolis. This is one of 51 locations that could eventually see one of those traffic safety cameras right on top of the traffic light pole there. Speed can kill. And that pedal to the metal behavior is causing injuries and deaths that the city of Minneapolis wants to bring down dramatically.
Speeding is our #1 traffic safety challenge. When we just talk about it last year, nearly 80% of fatal crashes in Minneapolis involved clear speeding.
Breaking that down a bit, over the last 3 years, 42 people were killed on Minneapolis roads, the majority due to speed. And those numbers are going up.
The increase in speeding since 2020 has been seen around the state and around the country as well.
Lyndale and Broadway was identified as a potential camera location. It's had the most injury crashes, with 50 in the last 5 years. 26th and Hiawatha came in at second. The initial 5 locations that will get the first speed cameras have not yet been identified. But when they are, here's how it will work. The camera will sense your speed. If you're 10 miles per hour over the speed limit or more, it will take a picture of your back license plate. The first time, you will get a warning. If you get another one, a $40 ticket. But if you weren't driving your car at the time, you can sign a statement that says you were not behind the wheel. The city believing drivers will be honest.
So they have a similar provision in Oregon, and they haven't seen rampant abuse of that, because how many folks want to lie in providing a sworn statement to, the courts and other things, over a $40 citation. So, I think we'll see how it goes. This is a pilot, and if there's a lot of abuse there, then maybe there would be adjustments in the future.
The cameras will not be used to identify outstanding warrants or any other issues, and you will not get points on your driving record. Foley says right now about 2 to 8% of drivers speed through an intersection. Other states with similar camera programs have that number down to 0.5% within 6 months. So again, it's going to start with the speeding technology, but eventually they will likely bring in the red light technology. Just starting things off right now, catching drivers who are speeding. Now, as far as where these things will go, well, they're going to use crash data. They're also going to get community feedback and see what people think about what the priorities should be around the intersections that they're concerned about and that kind of thing. Still a lot to do, but it looks like 5 could be installed right around August, this August, coming up this summer. We're live in South Minneapolis. Karen Scullin, Fox 9.
That's crazy. That's wild as hell that we literally, the things that we go through as a community of trying to do better. And we have all these programs, and now they want to put up one that we really don't have no trust. We haven't really got no change. And are you going to use this correctly? Because I'll tell you right now, the 2 areas that they brought up, Broadway and Lyndale over north, that's a highly populated black and brown area. Majority black. right? And then Hiawatha, that's a predominantly Latino and African area. So what are we doing? And especially if it's red light, yeah, you know, that's I don't understand it. Yeah, those are fucked up ass areas for accidents. Yes, people, you know, in my eyes, we need to hold people accountable. There was I'll be honest, right? When did Broadway and Lindale become such bad hotspots, right? Because it used to be when I was growing up, it used to be on the other side of 94, right? It wasn't really over by Freedman's. It wasn't over by Wendy's or in Taco Bell. You know, it wasn't by Merwin's or the gas station Winners, Walgreens. It wasn't over by the little AutoZone, LTDR, little shopping places by Cub Foods. Like those were respected areas, and now it's just run down. You can do what you want to do. You know, that's the one crazy thing. You can do what you want to do because they're not really doing nothing. That's, you know, I sit here and I look at it. What is the mission? What is the goal? Because is your goal as an organization to save who you can and leave the rest behind? What about the ones that are trying to get out this hellhole and that the way they're doing it, you don't agree with? Or they don't fuck with you because of the way that you do it? You know, that's the one crazy part for me is like people call themselves self-made men. Show me how you're self-made. Because you had to cut another nigga throat to get where you're at. Or you had to be a fraud or a scam. So how's that self-made? Because I'll tell you like this, I don't even know who this white guy is, and I don't know who most billionaires are. But Mr. Beast, where like these niggas just come out of nowhere. You know, somebody tried to tell me that Anton Lazaro was a billionaire. I said, wait, what? But then I understand it. You know what I'm saying? Because when I looked at a lot of the money that was going to Lacey when he was going against Omar, there was a lot of money. There was a lot. It was almost $19 million, 18.6. And it's like, and I think Elon she got 6 million. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, God, and she still blew this nigga out the water. Still blew him. Wasn't even close. So I'm like, yeah. But when I heard that Lazaro was a billionaire, it made me really look at the systems differently because as long as a motherfucker got money, they're okay. And to be honest, I feel like the only reason why Anton got caught and popped off, he messed with the wrong kids, some of the wrong parents. You know what I'm saying? There was watchful parents. And you had a penthouse at the wrong hotel. You had a penthouse at the wrong hotel because even just like we've seen with Diddy, the truth will always come to the light. You can't do evil in the dark and expect motherfuckers not to talk about it because somewhere out there, there's niggas talking about it. Oh, there we go. No, I'm back. That was crazy. So I lost you for a second there. I guess we're back. We got connection. But yeah, that's insane. And this shows you that everybody has a price. You know, I mean, there's legislation, there's policies that allow these people to keep on doing what they're doing. And the that's the one thing that I sit here and I think about, right? Because We lift up these people in Minnesota, Minneapolis, but yet we never talk about the truth tellers. We never talk about the people that mattered, that were trying to make a difference and that weren't paid by the system. Because I think a lot of individuals started to see what was happening, and then they started to slowly get hit. Because nobody ever wants to look at, they don't want to read the fine print. They don't ever want to look at all the clues, the hints, because there's a lot. But again, we're not built like that. We're not built to look at all the signs, because they're there. If you want to pay attention, the signs are there. The signs are there, and they've been there. But do most people honestly want to pay attention to them? And in my eyes, they don't, because they got something better they can do. And I still don't understand why we're so quick to call out these celebrities or entertainers, but then we don't never talk about our people in our community. We'll talk about, oh, he's a celebrity, so we're going to talk about him. Well, hold on, because what about all these other people that live by us, but yet we don't say nothing? You know what I'm saying? It's like, so we can't talk about that. We want to get rid of all this wrong in our community when niggas doing right, and y'all think that he's the problem. You think that the person calling it out, the person exposing it, the whistleblower is the problem. No, it doesn't work like that. So I want to talk about feeding our future, because there were some big developments yesterday. And honestly, I think people need to hear it. And also I want to get to, also, a lot of people don't know, is CFPB was shut down. So you need to listen and pay attention, because there's a lot of things that are happening in our community, in our neighborhoods, that potentially could really be significant.
Court wrapped just minutes ago an Amy Box trial centered on the $250 million Feeding Our Future case.
Let's get right to Raya Katene, who was there when another defendant who pleaded guilty took the stand. Raya?
Yeah, that witness is a woman named Kamar Hassan, who was clearly emotional on the stand today, even having to take a moment to collect herself at certain points to wipe away her tears. Talking through tears on the witness stand, Kamar Hassan says she's ashamed of the role she played in the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. Hassan pleaded guilty in August of 2023 to money laundering and conspiracy to commit wire fraud as the co-owner of SNS Catering, a Minneapolis-based catering and takeout restaurant. Sifting through dozens of invoices and receipts, federal prosecutors questioned Hassan about the meals she claimed to by the defense. Hassan says she almost never worked directly with Bach and usually conducted business with a different Feeding Our Future employee.
We'll go back, because I know I just had connection issues.
Court wrapped just minutes ago an Amy Box trial centered on the $250 million Feeding Our Future case.
Let's get right to Raya Katene, who was there when another defendant who pleaded guilty took the stand. Raya?
Yeah, that witness is a woman named Kamar Hassan, who was clearly emotional on the stand today, even having to take a moment to collect herself at certain points to wipe away her tears. Talking through tears on the witness stand, Kamar Hassan says she's ashamed of the role she played in the Feeding Our Future fraud scheme. Hassan pleaded guilty in August of 2023 to money laundering and conspiracy to commit wire fraud as the co-owner of SNS Catering, a Minneapolis-based catering and takeout restaurant. Sifting through dozens of invoices and receipts, federal prosecutors questioned Hassan about the meals she claimed to serve and her relationship to Amy Bach, the alleged mastermind of the $250 million scheme to defraud the government, currently on trial alongside co-defendant Salim Saeed. Hassan says she and her business partner, Sarah Noor, approached Bach about working together in August of 2021 after seeing others in the Somali community making money off food programs sponsored by Feeding Our Future. Hassan says she began working with Feeding Our Future in September of 2020 and over the course of several months collected more than $5 million by falsifying records and claiming to serve thousands of meals every day. Hassan claims she has only met Bach twice, once at her office and once at a party thrown by the Somali community to celebrate Bach winning previous court cases. When questioned by the defense, Hassan says she almost never worked directly with Bach and usually conducted business with a different Feeding Our Future employee. Hassan says it was her partner Noor who mainly dealt with Bach and was even good friends with her. Hassan admits she worked with family and friends to open fake meal distribution sites, to which she testified today, quote, "We did a big mistake and I'm not happy today. I feel
ashamed." That's crazy.
Now, Bach's defense attorney did question Hassan on whether Bach ever pressured her or encouraged her to commit the fraud. And Hassan says that Bach did not, but she says that Bach was in a position to be aware of what was happening and that she should have done more to stop it. Back to you.
A little relief and someone at least feeling an ounce of shame over this massive fraud. Thanks so much, Raya.
That's crazy. Because that shit was massive. I mean, that was
in over your head with the price of doing.
That was no game, because I'll tell you right now, the 250,000 or million isn't even the tip of the iceberg. But I want to get into, there's another one, is that we all talked about this yesterday, is what's going to go down with New Way. So we're going to talk about that for a minute and listen to this report.
In other news tonight, in the last 4 hours, a legal Hail Mary as a judge took up a request from addiction treatment provider New Way for a restraining order to prevent a funding freeze. This comes as the state, citing credible allegations of fraud, says its plans to temporarily cut off Medicaid funding for outpatient services to New Way as soon as tomorrow. AJ Legault has the latest developments in his investigation, Recovery, Inc.
In limbo. That's where the fate of New Way stands at this hour. They're one of the state's largest providers of addiction treatment, and the State Department of Human Services says it's turning off their Medicaid payments effective tomorrow, Friday, February 21st, because of credible allegations of fraud. That's what the state calls them. New Way has asked a federal judge to issue a restraining order that would prevent DHS from turning off their funding. The judge, John Thunheim, says he's taking these arguments under advisement and he'll issue an order soon. Now, if you want to know what's led up to this point, you can read all about it on KARA11.com.
Wow. That's big. But then even
some Minnesota lawmakers say shuttering a federal watchdog agency could hurt consumers.
Right now, some work at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is on pause. Caroline Cummings explains what it does and why some are concerned.
Welcome to the Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee.
Many miles away from Washington, the fate of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau took center stage in the Minnesota House Commerce Committee on Thursday.
The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created 15 years ago.
The CFPB, as it's known, was born out of the 2008 Great Recession and is designed to protect people from corporate fraud and scams. But now its future could be in jeopardy after the acting director of the agency earlier this month said it should stop its work as the Trump administration looks to revamp the federal government.
Who is going to protect student loan borrowers like me? We need someone policing this bad behavior and protecting consumers.
Without the CFPB, there will be no watchdog ensuring fairness in the rental market and student loan financing.
In Minnesota, the State Department of Commerce is a place for consumers to report issues, but leaders in that agency testified that certain areas like federally regulated banks and credit card companies are not in their purview. Its staff dedicated to these issues is also small.
If consumers don't have a place to go, and this has happened in the past, where if they're not getting a response either from a different agency, whether that's a state agency or a federal agency, they will continue to follow up with us. So that is something we'll be monitoring closely.
The legislature recently passed laws protecting people with medical debt and student loan borrowers, but some DFL lawmakers warn that the state can only do so much if the CFPB shuts down.
We'll certainly do our best. We take it as our mission and our creed to protect Minnesotans, but we are out-resourced in this one.
At the Capitol, Caroline Cummings, WC.
That's another thing that people need to watch. I want to get into what happened yesterday at the state capitol. There was an exchange on a bill, House File 768, and I'll pull it up for you too as well.
To do it,
they
but
were
I
talking
think that
about this exchange.
What I'm really interested in preserving is
talk about Leah Fenke.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Hudson, for your bill,
and Walter Hudson. So let's get into it, and I'll be quiet.
This is another bill that I mean, I really do understand and basically support the idea that's being here, if I understand correctly. I did work on potentially bringing an amendment to find a middle way here, because I do think there's something that we could work here. We didn't have time, and I wasn't quite sure how to do it, but I think that what I'm really interested in preserving is your addition. There is this, like, the idea of the Minnesota Department of Human Rights putting forward a report each biennium that recommends policy and system changes to incidents across civil rights incidents, being a report that the Minnesota Department of Human Rights produces. I'm very interested in